Welcome back to Ivy Unleashed. Today is already interesting. Brooke and I have been deep diving with our guest already. We have so much to cover today, so we really want to get into it. We're going to be learning about the hypothalamus, which sounds very sciencey, but from what we've already gathered, there's a lot more to this that's really juicy. And we have the perfect guest to help us understand our bodies a little bit more and help us kind of tap into some secret sauce. So welcome to Ivy Unleashed, Deborah Maragopoulos.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're really excited because we haven't really talked about this. And you sent us your book, and reading through your book, you can learn a lot, and it can get sciencey to learn about something in your body because especially the hypothalamus, because it controls so much. So we want to learn what it controls and what we can control with it, right? Because it's one thing to know how it affects you and what it does, but it's another to know like, okay, how do I actually help myself out here? So before we dive into all of that, we're doing something at the start of every episode that just creates some instant impact for our listeners. So if you could just give one takeaway right away, just like your biggest takeaway you'd think for our listeners, what would it be?
I think the biggest takeaway before we even get started is that you really need to pay attention to the maestro of your symphony of hormones, neurotransmitters, cytokines, all your biochemistry, and that's the hypothalamus. We tend to treat in conventional medicine all the downstream symptoms, but upstream is this little gland running the whole show, and it's ignored by medicine.
And we're going to get into that today. Specifically, so many women listening, myself included, we feel like we're doing all of the right things. We're getting the lab work done. Everything shows fine. The doctor is like, nope, you look great. You should be so lucky to be this healthy. And internally and outside the doctor's office, we're like, no, we know we feel like crap. Something is off. So why do you believe there's such a gap? What do we do with that gap?
Well, there's a gap because it's a gap in medicine. Okay. And the reason it's a gap in medicine, it's not that we weren't trained on it. We learned about the hypothalamus. If you took anatomy and physiology in college, you learned about it. But because you can't directly measure hypothalamic hormones, there's a few you can measure, but most of them you cannot. You can't see the effects on the hypothalamus directly. And so many providers are very dependent on lab tests, very dependent on lab tests. And for me, learning how to become a hypothalamic expert, which took years, was more like field biology. Okay. I had to look at that underlying lab test, kind of like I'm looking at scat on a trail and say, that looks like coyote scat. Now let's get it tested. Oh, it's a male or it's a female in estrus, or she has pups because she's lactating. I can tell that all from that swoop, right? I'm looking at labs underlying saying, if I'm seeing these labs together in relationship to each other, not just whether they're within normal limits, but do they make sense to one another? I think I'm looking at a hypothalamic issue. I didn't find that right away, though. I mean, it took an event in my clinical life to realize, holy moly, I'm treating downstream too. How do I find the upstream answer?
And for people listening, what is the hypothalamus? Why is this so important?
The hypothalamus is a very small gland at the top of your brainstem. It is not protected by the blood-brain barrier, so it receives everything, every nutrient you put in your mouth, every toxin you expose yourself to, every pathogen, all of the electrolytes, how much glucose is in there, amino acids, fatty acids. It's reading everything. It is connected to 4 out of 5 of your senses directly, so it knows where you are in space and time. Its main job is to help you survive. And it will do that by shunting nutrient resources, to the organs of survival, and the other organs that aren't really necessary for survival, like your hair, your skin, even your brain won't get what it needs. If the heart needs all those amino acids to run the system, the brain's not getting it, so you're going to be anxious and depressed. So it is constantly making those connections, and it's like a CEO of a company, okay? At the top, we think of the pituitary gland as the master. It's not, it's middle management. Okay. The hypothalamus is telling the pituitary gland what to do based on communication back to the hypothalamus from the lower endocrine glands, from the electrolytes, from what's going on in your bloodstream, what's going on with your nervous system. It directs the autonomic nervous system, the fight or flight, sympathetic as well as the vagal parasympathetic response. It talks directly to your gut. It actually directs what's happening in your DNA, in your genetic potential through all of these hormones. So if you don't optimize it, you don't live your full potential.
Ooh, and optimizing it. So what I'm hearing with all the toxins, I'm hearing like the healthier foods that you eat, the cleaner water that you're drinking, maybe not breathing in chemicals. Are those the types of things that you would give people advice for so that the toxins aren't affecting the hypothalamus in a negative way?
Yes, but how many of us can do that? How many of us can do all that? Are you controlling, the air? Or can you control everything in your environment you didn't even know about? That you have the wrong kind of carpet, you have the wrong kind of insulation.
Probably.
You don't even know these things.
Yeah.
If your body gets what it needs at that micronutrient level, it can detox, even if you're living in a toxic environment.
Oh.
So it really is about getting the hypothalamus what it needs through, circadian rhythm, through your nutrition. You definitely want to make good choices, filling in the blanks nutraceutically, your mindset, what you believe becomes. And if your hypothalamus is only hearing you negative talking, oh my gosh, look how fat I am, and I'm never going to heal, and I'm looking so old, and it's literally going to fulfill your beliefs. That's what you're telling it. So there's so many factors that feed into the hypothalamus. It's not just one thing, because it's controlling so many other things. But once it's optimized, you start craving better foods. You want to be more active. You crave the social activity that you need, like hugs and being with other people and that interaction that keeps you emotionally and spiritually healthy. You make better decisions. You sleep deeper. You remember your dreams. And then maybe you can even dream your new future.
So when you're looking, you said you did the field study. What are you specifically looking for, and how do you know it's the hypothalamus that needs the love and support?
That's such a good question. So what I found in my 30 plus years of doing this is that I can tell a lot about a patient, first off, by their narrative. When they're telling me what's happening with them, I can start to see the patterning. Okay. So if you're a woman and you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, you're fatigued when you wake up in the morning, but then you're wired and tired, you crash in the afternoon, you can't sleep at night, either you can't fall asleep, you can't stay asleep, your gut's out of balance, you've been, doing all kinds of cleanses and nothing's really working. Your hormones are out of balance, either because your periods are irregular, you're infertile, your skin's a mess, you've got terrible PMS, or you're going through perimenopause. You're going through menopause, obviously it's out of balance. You've been told, that your adrenals are off, maybe your thyroid's off, et cetera, but it's not showing up in the blood. You suspect all this stuff. You're just really feeling off, but you're not seeing it in the blood. So I'm looking at all of this language that I'm seeing with my patient. I'm looking at what she's focusing on. I'm looking at her body. She's telling me one thing, that she's having like weight issues. I'm looking exactly where that fat is on her body. Does she have cortisol, related fat? Is it androgen? Is it gyne fat? Like, she's saying she's chubby and she's got that perfect Venus figure, that's, it's just not fitting the modern days world, idea of thin. So I'm really looking at a lot of muscle mass, with men, they'll tell me, yeah, I'm fine. My libido's fine. I never have erectile dysfunction. I'm looking at the back of their deltoids, which are completely flat, which means their testosterone is falling. And they're like, wait, so everybody gets their clothes off. I have to see that whole body. I have to see what's going on. So it's a lot of data I'm pulling. And then I look at a lot of different labs that most providers don't look at. But I also look at the basic labs that they do look at with different eyes.
Okay. And I'm thinking of the person that's, you just listed all of our listeners, whether they have sleep issues or gut issues, or they know their hormones are starting to get wacky because they're in perimenopause or they're trying to get pregnant. I mean, it's all women that are listening. And so I guess I'm trying to think about, if something's off and maybe you're not ready to schedule with a provider yet, but you're thinking about, what are some lifestyle things that I could do to kind of get these things under control? Is there something with the hypothalamus that's kind of a good starting point of something to do to kind of let it know, I want to heal, we want to get better? Maybe it's emotional, spiritual, physical, like what comes to mind?
Well, I think the biggest impact you can have on your hypothalamus so that it's working for you, you're actually you're actually being a good cheerleader for your hypothalamus, is really following a circadian rhythm. It controls your circadian day-night cycles. And so if you're the kind of person who's staying up really late, you're getting up really late, you're on your screens after dusk, you're eating really late, you're telling your hypothalamus not to go into nocturnal mode. And during the night, your hypothalamus directs all the hormones of the nighttime. That's growth hormone for repair, that's prolactin to get you into deep sleep and to get your immune system really doing its job to clean house. It's to keep that cortisol level down. The hypothalamus is what tells your pineal gland to produce melatonin. It directly gets messages from your optic nerve to a neuron in the hypothalamus that literally turns on the day-night cycle. So if you're not really following a circadian rhythm, and that includes eating as well, you need to get up and you need to, I always start with my supplements that need to be on the empty stomach, and then wait at least 15 minutes before eating. But you should be waking up hungry like a little kid wanting her cereal. That means your insulin levels, your blood sugar levels are low, and your hypothalamus is saying, wait, I need to eat right away. And so that is actually a good sign that insulin resistance is not an issue for you. And really exercising earlier in the day, exercising late, like after work, after dark, is just a cortisol spike. Again, you're telling your hypothalamus, I'm still running away from danger here. Don't stop. I can't go to sleep. The tiger might catch me. So really following a circadian clock. I'm a big fan of circadian fasting, not intermittent fasting. Okay. So stop eating after dark.
Okay.
But eat first thing in the morning.
Yeah, eat early in the morning. Get the majority of your calories in early. And I know right now it's a little harder because, the light's a lot longer. But my husband and I tried this. Was a really good study that showed that if middle-aged people stopped eating after 5, and they didn't say what season it was, they saw major changes in their metabolism. Okay. They saw changes in hemoglobin A1C, and they saw changes in weight. They slept better. So I said, okay, how hard is that going to be? So my husband and I tried it for a couple of weeks. I slept so much better, lost a little weight. Didn't really need to, but it's like, wow, that just dropped off. Didn't eat any differently. In fact, I was kind of craving some stuff. So I'm like, I'm going to make some homemade banana bread, some homemade zucchini bread, have that in the morning. But we just stopped eating by 5. And it was a big difference. I had one of my patients come to me who's been struggling with her weight for years. And we've done everything. A lot of it's emotional for her. She has been supporting her hypothalamus nutraceutically, but she still hasn't gotten to that circadian eating. So I gave her that challenge, please just stop eating after 5. And she did it. And for the first time ever, she lost like 15 pounds in a month. Now she has a significant amount of weight to lose. So that was a small proportion of her weight. But she was shocked. She said, because I really didn't eat anything different. It was all timing. But then I started craving like more protein and more vegetables, and I was sleeping better. And I said, because you put your hypothalamus in sleep mode by not still digesting, the hypothalamus was able to go into nocturnal mode and clean house and do the job that it's supposed to do. And you've had more energy in the morning, and now you're finally, because most overweight people, in my opinion, I see this a lot, are not hungry in the morning. They're just not. And they can't seem to get that first meal in till like 10, 11 o'clock later. And they eat the majority of their calories much later, which is when you should be slowing that down. So it's, that one little thing can make such a big difference.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I feel like so many women, or just in general, anyone who tries intermittent fasting, they're skipping breakfast. It's like the no-brainer. That's what they do. And we weren't taught like to be hungry right when we wake up. But when you think about when you're younger, what do you do as a little kid? Like you wake up, you eat breakfast. Now, what is your thought on waking up having caffeine before breakfast and what that does to our hypothalamus?
I don't have any problem with caffeine before breakfast if you have a healthy hypothalamus. Okay. I have a cup of coffee in the morning, and I take my supplementation, I drink my coffee, I wait, and then I have something to eat. Mainly because coffee to me is kind of a meditative thing. It's not really for the caffeine, because I'm the kind of person that pops out of bed and I'm ready to go. And my husband's like, can you please just stay in bed? I'm like, nope, I'm ready. Sun's up. But it's kind of a meditative thing. My Nana, my husband's grandma used to sit down with their coffee, and I was never a sitter. I just couldn't sit. I was too hyper. So I put it in a real cup, open, and I have to sit with it. And I journal. I take it outside and I enjoy the birds. I like my coffee is like meditative to the point if I smell coffee, I feel calm. Okay. But I related it to that particular piece. Plus a little bit of caffeine can really help move your bowels. That can be a good thing. But if you have an HPA axis issue, hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis issue, and your cortisol has been revving constantly, or hypothalamus is saying, I'm not even paying attention to this anymore because you're constantly been crying wolf, then you start get miscommunication in that system. Then if you're having to start your day with caffeine, if you're the kind of person that has to have caffeine just to wake up, that's not good for your hypothalamus. That's not what you want. So what you'll find is if you start eating so late, and have that nice big 3-4 hour window of not eating before you go to bed, and get to bed at a decent time, like 10 or 11, okay, go to sleep in the complete dark, you're going to want to get up with the sun. You're going to naturally want to get up with the sun 7 to 9 hours later, and your hypothalamus will tell you that it needs to eat, okay? You're not cortisol spikes in the middle of the night. And the hypothalamus, the way it tells you it needs to eat is it wakes up with that low blood sugar and it says, oh, I need some sugar right away. So it tells your adrenal glands to make some cortisol in the morning so that it can release that stored sugar. And then it can have the glucose. And it also makes something called dopamine. And dopamine is one of our neurotransmitters. And it's the one that keeps you focused and awake. And that's what wakes you up. That's what helps you remember your dreams. That's what turns prolactin off so you're not sleepwalking during the day. So that's a very good, that's how I look to see if the hypothalamus is actually making enough dopamine, is I check my patient's prolactin, which is a hormone, at 8 to 9 a.m. in the morning. It doesn't have to be grossly high, but if it's not within what I consider normal limits, which it should be low, should be around under 9 or 10 at 8 to 9 a.m. in the morning. Now that's granted, especially for women, no nipple stim 24 hours before, because that'll artificially raise your prolactin.
Did you say nipple stim?
Yes, I am saying
that's a first.
That'll wake you up.
Can I say that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Nipple stim. I want to say it too.
We're all women here. But anyhow, that prolactin is the prolactation.
Wait, when can we not have nipple stim?
Yeah, go back. You lost me.
24 hours before you get your prolactin levels checked.
Okay, if you're getting it checked. Got it. Okay, no nip stim.
Otherwise, you're welcome to stimulate your nipples all you want. But before you get your prolactin levels checked, do not stimulate your nipples or you'll have an artificial elevation.
Got it.
Because what does a nipple stim do when breastfeeding? It raises prolactin to get the breast milk going, right? That's what
she's like, can we back up for a second here?
Sorry, I had to, Deborah.
With what prolactin did in the first place. Prolactin, we all make it. Okay. Men, women, children.
Okay.
We make the most at night, which puts us into deep REM sleep. And turns on our immune system so your T cells know the difference between you and everything else. So it's not attacking you.
Got it.
So it's super important. It's low during the day and high at night. It has an 8-hour window. So once you turn it on, it's on for 8 hours. So if you get to bed really late, okay, and because you're on your screens, you're doing work, you're not settling down, you're not going to get a prolactin surge to very late. So you wake up in the morning because you got to use your alarm, you got a meeting to do. You wake up on prolactin. It's like you're sleepwalking. You're the person who needs caffeine, okay? Because the only thing that turns prolactin off is dopamine by the hypothalamus. That's part of that circadian rhythm. So that's one way I can look at the hypothalamus. Nobody checks prolactin unless you have milk leaking from your breasts or a man with gynecomastia. It looks like he has like breast tissue underneath his areola. That's when they check prolactin. And they treat high prolactin tumors, which I also treat. But I'm telling you, circadian prolactin is super important to measure to see what's going on with the hypothalamus. Okay,
what if people love nipple stim? Are they negatively impacting their health?
Not at all. Not at all.
Okay.
You're going to make prolactin at night. You're going to make prolactin whenever you nipple stim. What I'm saying is to see to see kind of your natural level, want to avoid that for 24 hours.
Got it.
Like you're never checking prolactin in a breastfeeding woman. She's getting nipple stim all the time, right?
Yeah.
We're not doing that. We want her prolactin to be high. That's how she's making milk.
Yeah.
But it's the same with a man. Okay. Yeah. If I'm checking his PSA, he cannot ejaculate for at least 3 to 5 days prior to that PSA being checked, because the stimulation of ejaculation will raise prostate specific antigen.
Got it.
Okay. And a lot of people don't know this stuff. They just randomly, I see blood work on patients all the time that they come in from, not that I've ordered, that they come in with, and I'm like, okay, they got an FSH, an LH, an estradiol, a progesterone. What day of your cycle were you on? Because it doesn't say here, and they shouldn't have been getting all of that randomly, because it matters what day of your cycle you were on. They just measured this stuff randomly.
I've had that happen too, where I've done a test where I did the test to get all my numbers, and it was like, to say what day you were on or whatever, but they didn't say what day of your cycle to start. And so when I went to my primary, she was like, you shouldn't be taking these numbers unless you're on day 3 of your cycle, or, a specific day. So she's like, all these numbers you have are just random. I need it to be on this day to get an accurate measure of these numbers. And so it's these things that like people just don't know. We want to benchmark. We want to know where we're at with our health, but I don't feel like you always get that call ahead of time, like, hey, before you come in, make sure you don't do this, or make sure it's like, we'll have you in on day 3 of your cycle or whatever. Is that something that you do with your patients to make sure that they're aware?
Oh, absolutely. Like they get from my mouth, they get me in writing, they get my medical assistant, like literally checking on them. Like, you understand, it literally says on my requisition, this FSH is to be drawn on day 3 to 5 of your cycle. Prolactin must be 8 to 9 a.m. I write it on the on the order to the lab, and the lab was going to kick you out like you're not here at the right time. Then I also give them background, like I don't want you carb loading, 36 hours before you're going to, push that triglycerides up. Just eat normally. Let's see what's going on. So some of the tests we've decided, you can probably randomly check these things and they're probably okay, because they've mainly thrown everything into this bucket of just like check people because they have you as a captive audience. Let's just check this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they're not really looking at what's actually happening. I just had that happen to me. I had a horse accident. I had an equine accident where I was bucked off by a horse January 2025. Ended up landed on my own arm, breaking 4 ribs, but I had a huge hematoma on my hip from landing so hard on to the trail. And I went to drove myself to the ER because nobody was home, and, got everything checked, had the CT scan. I knew I had broken ribs, etc. I see my primary maybe 2.5 weeks later, and he's like, wow, you're healing so fast. Because I'm super healthy. I'm 65 years old, and I've no osteoporosis. I'm healing really fast. He says, we really should do some blood work. I'm like, don't check my CBC. It's not going to be normal. I'm exsanguinated into my hip. You checked it. Of course, it wasn't normal. It was part of my basic blood work. He said, we need to call you back for your CBC. I said, I told you all of these changes were going to happen. What if you have patients that don't know this? They're going to think something's really wrong because you didn't use.
Yeah. I think that just speaks to
use your head.
Yeah. And finding a provider that you trust. And doing your own education on top of what your doctor says. You hinted at cortisol earlier, and that's something I want to go back to. I didn't know, and this speaks to just the education piece that's out there. We hear high cortisol, high cortisol, high cortisol all throughout. Well, when I got mine checked, it was super low. So I have low cortisol. So for the women that have that, how does that affect, how is that being affected by the hypothalamus? Will you talk about that piece of how that can be possible for women?
Absolutely. Most of the patients I see have what's termed adrenal fatigue, which means low cortisol. So what happens is we're worried about high cortisol because it's inflammatory, it drives your blood sugar up, etc. If you're under chronic stress for a long period of time, that's what cortisol is supposed to do. The hypothalamus is saying, oh my gosh, we're being chased by a tiger. Let's make some more cortisol so we can fuel the fight or flight. And that's not supposed to happen forever. But this stress has been going on for weeks, months, years. Eventually your adrenals get pooped out and you make very low cortisol levels. Part of it is not because your adrenals are they can't work anymore. They're like little raisins and they shriveled up. No, you don't have true adrenal insufficiency. Because if we give you an ACTH test, which is the pituitary hormone that actually stimulates cortisol. The hypothalamus tells it to make that. We can see that you'll respond to your adrenals will make it. So it's not so much your adrenals can't make it, it's that you've worn out that feedback mechanism because the cortisol was so high for so long. Think of it like you're cooking in the kitchen and you've been in there for a while and you're sauteing some onions, and then your partner or another adult walks in and says, "Are you burning those onions?" You didn't even notice it because your receptor sites had gotten saturated by the odor. It was new to them. Your hypothalamus gets saturated by all that cortisol, and then it starts becoming resistant.
Kind of think like insulin resistant for that side of things. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. And the same thing can happen to any of the hormones when you're making too much of something over time. So restoring the HPA axis, the communication between the hypothalamus, pituitary, and adrenals, so that the hypothalamus wakes up to the cortisol that has been stimulated to produce, will actually help to rejuvenate the adrenal gland's function so that you can make more cortisol.
So how do I do that?
Well, supporting your hypothalamus nutraceutically is where you start. I also usually have my patients take a short course of glandular to kind of feed their adrenals. I also teach them that circadian aspect of living and eating, because that makes a huge difference. Your cortisol should be high in the morning, and then it actually has a natural dip in the afternoon when we all should be taking a little nap and a siesta. Then it comes up again in the early evening, and then it falls again. It should fall and stay down at night because it basically is the counterbalance to melatonin. If it's up, melatonin can't be up. So we need to keep that cortisol level down. Now, if somebody broke into your room, if your baby's crying, you're going to immediately get a cortisol spike, and you're going to wake yourself up, and you're going to respond to it. So your adrenals aren't totally asleep, but they're just told to be, we're in nocturnal mode now, calm down, take a rest. Okay. So part of it is resting that overstressed system, but the big thing is returning that communication between what's going on with cortisol and the hypothalamus, so it can become more activated. And then looking at the whole system, because the main hormone that controls cortisol is a hormone by the hypothalamus called pro-opiomelanocortin.
Never heard of her.
Say that 3 times fast.
POMC. POMC, that big hormone, 256 amino acids, breaks down to what will be cortico-releasing factor, which is what stimulates cortisol production. But also thyroid, controls the thyroid. It controls the liver's ability to store glycogen, release cholesterol. It controls glucose metabolism. It controls your day-night cycles through melanocyte stimulating hormone. And what's left over becomes endorphins. One hypothalamic hormone controls so much. That's actually how I discovered the hypothalamus in the first place.
Why have we never heard of this?
Well, because you can't measure POMC. You can't measure cortico-releasing hormone. You can't measure thyroid-releasing hormone or glucose-releasing factor. But you can look down. If you're a medical detective, that's how I pretty much function. And I'm looking at all those lower endocrine organs. So for you, with your low cortisol, I would actually look at your thyroid function. I would look at your prolactin to see if you're making enough dopamine. So thyroid function of full TSH, free T4 and free T3. So I can look at that nice little seesaw. Are they talking with each other? What thyroid stimulating hormone should be high if T4 and T3 are low, and vice versa. Lots of people come in with all the hypothyroid symptoms. They're fatigued, their skin is dry, their hair's falling out. They may even got to the point where they lost the last outer third of their eyebrows. That's how the thyroid affects that. There have been all the symptoms of it. Their metabolism is slow, they're putting on weight, and they're doing everything right in terms of eating and activity. But their T4 and T3 are the low end of normal, but so is the TSH. That's not a normal feedback mechanism. And they will be told by their provider, all your levels are within normal limits. Look at them together. I also look at DHEA sulfate, which is an adrenal hormone, and that's the counterbalance to cortisol. So when cortisol rises, DHEA rises because it helps you to metabolize protein and fat to repair the damage from the fight or flight that cortisol initiated. Okay, so if I see a DHEA level that is either super high or super low for your age, if it's super low for your age and you also have a low cortisol, that's adrenal fatigue. Your adrenals aren't producing that master DHEA hormone or the cortisol. If it's high, but your cortisol is low, then I know your adrenals can still function, but it's been functioning on overtime. You've just gotten out of that chronic stressor, and this was your first crash of cortisol.
If you're watching on YouTube, Deborah, you're such a good teacher. I feel like I had this in one of my last doctor appointments where she literally pulled out a diagram and I felt like I was in class. And I love it because it's like, it's hard. These are big words. It's hard to understand. You've been doing this for years. You've had so many patients. And so, and I was thinking before you even said that you're like a detective. I feel like you're like, okay, let me see everything and let me piece it together. Let me get this puzzle and I will get it figured out super fast. But I think it's important to find a doctor, a physician, a practitioner that's a teacher, right? Because we need to understand what's going on. Because a part of this puzzle, I think, is not just taking someone's word for it and trying the stuff. It's understanding your body, knowing it better, and knowing what we're trying to do, not just pretending you know things. I think it's to learn about it. Then you can believe that you're healing. So when you're taking a supplement, you know what it's for. You know what it's doing in your body. Because I think that's part of the puzzle is like, you're relying on Deborah to be your healer, cool, but like you also, I think there needs to be more of a partnership of taking accountability for your body. What am I doing too? Okay, I got the teaching from her, I got the pharmaceuticals that I need from her, but like also I need to believe that this is possible, that I can heal. And we kind of touched on that before the episode, and I would like to dive into this because I think stress sometimes can be a mindset thing, like things going on in your life, people are like, I have so much going on. Or it could be like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited about what I have going on today. You know, there's different ways to look at stress. There's different ways to look at what you're putting in your body to heal it. And so I feel like there's this piece of healing that is almost like taking accountability and not just relying on the physician. And so I would love for you to talk about how your mindset and what you believe and the accountability of taking of your health, like how that plays into people actually being able to heal.
That is such a good point. And I love the fact that your provider pulled out a diagram. I actually draw pictures for my patients. I was using the paper on the table and they tear it off and take it with them. And now I have, big sheets that I send them with because you don't understand. And graphics make a huge difference just in the learning process. But it is a big piece. One of my 5 pillars of hypothalamic healing is mindset. And if you're a negative self-talker, if you're the kind of person who looks at the glass as half empty, if you're looking at your body and you're saying, oh my gosh, why am I still fat? And why can't this heal? And, what's going on? What is wrong with me? And you're constantly looking at what's wrong instead of what's right. That energy, that vibration, that self-talk is being picked up by your hypothalamus, by your cells, by your DNA. We know that. We know DNA literally dances, literally moves and curves, and the way it curves is how you express according to whether you're emotionally in a fear state or a love state. If you're in a fear state, it literally is jagged and does not turn and curve in the correct way. So you express disease. If you're in a love state, then it actually has a beautiful wavelength, a beautiful curve. It's really easy for the RNA to then match up to it and then make new you. So, and by love and fear, I mean fear is negative talk and worry and anxiety and frustration, and love is gratitude and looking for the beauty and laughter. We know those things are healing. So it's not easy to change your mindset because a lot of us are kind of born with this attitude, and then we learn it from our caretakers. We learn it from our parents. We learn it from our life experiences. But what I've found is as my patients, we do this work, they're taking their nutraceutical support, we're working on their sleep and their diet and their activity, their mindset starts to shift and they start looking and seeing the positive. In fact, when I first was doing my research on my hypothalamic nutraceutical, we did all the vital signs and the biometrics and, body composition. I literally had a research nurse do all that with them, but they also had to keep journals. They had to write down what was happening before we started and for the 6-month study. And what was happening in their journals was most profound. Yes, I was seeing blood work changes, but that took a while, 3 to 6 months to see that change. But the way they were expressing themselves started to shift. They became much more self-aware. They started seeing the beauty in life. they started changing things in their life. I had one dad decide, you know what? I'm going to be an at-home dad and, work from home because I want to spend more time with my kids. People have different ideas about what's happening and belief systems. What I found is I was a obsessive exerciser. I mean, obsessive. I had an eating disorder from the time I was 14. My eating disorder morphed into obsessive exercise. I was a long distance runner, triathlete, and I could not run far enough, swim long enough, bike long enough to get away from my stressors. Okay. And once I started nutraceutically supporting myself and I took myself off of everything that I had been taking, supplements, hormones, everything else, I was 39 at the time. About maybe 2 or 3 weeks into it, I couldn't put on my cardio monitor and go out for a run. My Achilles tendons would hurt me so bad. I've never had an Achilles injury. I couldn't run. I could take it off and run around and play with the kids and the dogs. But if I had that obsessive mindset, my body was saying, nope, we're done with this. We're done with this. I couldn't get on my bike and do my, huge, bike rides. I mean, my body was saying enough. About a year later, I decided, you know what? I'm going to try doing a triathlon, and I'm going to do it in partner. I'll do the bike, and I'll let, I have somebody running for me, somebody doing the swimming. It's the first time I ever saw the course, and my body didn't fail me. I was only like a minute off my best time for that course. I had been training for a year. So I needed to slow down. My body told me you need to slow down. And by slowing down, I also put on the 5 pounds my body needed because my body fat was way too low to start having periods for the first time in 20 years by myself. So it's like my body was talking to me and I was listening. And it had to do with food. It had to do with the way I looked at my body. I was not looking through fat eyes anymore. I was looking through fit eyes. But just one valve changed. And I was suddenly looking at myself differently. I could see the beauty in life. I was seeing this in the journals of my patients. I see that now in my patients where they come to me and said, oh my gosh, I realized I had one woman who'd been working on weight issues for a while. She was probably in her 50s, back and forth, losing weight, tried everything way before the GLP-1s. We're talking Weight Watchers and all the different diets and stuff. And then we got her supported on the nutraceutical, and her hypothalamus started talking to her. And she came to me and she said, I finally figured out what I'm doing wrong. I said, what is it? She said, and I tried to get her into counseling, and she's like, I don't do that. She said, I'm sabotaging myself. I said, why do you think that is? She said, because when I lose weight, other men look at me and I'm afraid I'm going to be unfaithful. So we got her into counseling, at couple and single counseling. And she got over that piece of it. But it'd been years of working with her and suggesting, some of this emotional stuff, but she just wasn't ready to receive it. Until her hypothalamus felt safe, she wasn't ready to really understand the deeper issue. And then she kept the weight off. All through menopause, she's fine.
I think that's something too that some people have never felt safe. Like they're in fight or flight from childhood, and it's like the only way they know how to function. And so I think a lot of people can relate to that feeling of, this is all I've ever known, and I don't know how to get out of it, right? And you can say it's a mindset thing. You can try therapy, and I think it's all really important. And if anything, like you just said, speaks to the importance of mental health, right? Of what you're saying to yourself is so important. And I just think, just the way life is built and with technology and everything, I feel like it's getting worse, that we're just numbing or using devices and it's just messing up with our self-awareness of hearing our body speak to us these ways that you're speaking of. I think it's definitely the slowing down and working with someone to kind of help them understand it's important to hear yourself and to maybe think about when you're going to bed and all of these different pieces to the puzzle. And so, I just think it's fascinating. I feel like there's so many pieces to the hypothalamus, but I like that you keep saying two things, like that it's speaking to you. That's really cool. And you keep talking about nutraceuticals. So when you're saying nutraceuticals, like what are you referring to when you're saying that?
So the hypothalamus needs certain amino acids and enough abundance of them in order to do its job well. And while we get those amino acids from protein sources, the majority of that goes back to repairing tissues. And so the hypothalamus sometimes can get a little shorted if you're not taking in enough protein. So certain amino acids in what I call a hypothalamic blend. A lot of amino acids that are out there are just, basically like whey amino acids, and they look just like milk, but it's not necessarily the exact blend that the hypothalamus needs in terms of the ratio of the amino acids. It also needs a lot of phytonutrients. Those come from plants. And one of the richest sources of phytonutrients are seed vegetation. And we don't get nearly enough of that, okay? And a variety of plants and seed vegetation from all different seeds and all around the world. And the reason for that is unless you're in a culture that is very, very genetically pure, meaning you're the same. Like I'm half Italian, but the other half is kind of a mutt, you know? And then I have half, my husband's half Greek and half mutt too. And so the kids are all mixed up genetics. We were meant genetically to actually eat from our homelands, and that could be all over the place. So the tomatoes I grow in Ojai here are not going to have the same genetic profile and the same nutrients as the ones grown from my southern Italian roots, in Calabria. Okay. So we need a variety of phytonutrients from around the world. We also need not to megadose stuff because we want to give a potpourri of nutrients to the hypothalamus so it can pick and choose. It may not need some of it. It may need others to run the system. Its job is survival. So it's not going to let you move into your psychological issues until it's got all the physical stuff down. Mm-hmm. So sometimes I can't really work with mindset with people right in the beginning because they're just not open yet. Mm-hmm. They can't remember. They don't know why. They just want to, you just tell me what to do. And that's not how I work. I like to help you understand your body, but I'll give you some basic directions to start with. So you feel like I've guided you somewhat, but I want you to start listening to your body. And what is it saying? Why? And don't ask why you're craving it. Let's just journal it. Let's see what's happening. Let's see what's happening in your body. So it can talk to you. And I personally experienced, I've had many patients experience it. But now, because I actually had to put together a nutraceutical because there wasn't one out there. There's glandulars for the hypothalamus, like there's glandulars for most glands. And this was back in the late 90s when I was doing my hypothalamic research and thinking, oh my gosh, it's the hypothalamus, and I'm treating all my patients downstream with these, integrative complementary therapies. So they don't want conventional medicine, but I'm still making them dependent on me. Mm-hmm. If I could just feed the hypothalamus what it needs, could they heal? And that's what I found once I was able to put this together. And the formula itself came to me in dreams. We talked about this before, but I had dreamt everything significant in my life. I dreamt my husband 5 months before I met him. I dreamt both of my children as they looked as babies before I even conceived them. Whoa. I dreamt my granddaughter, when my daughter was 4 months pregnant, I didn't even know she was a girl. She looks exactly like she did at 4 to 5 years of age. I dreamt everything significant in my life. My house I live in, my practice, and who was actually going to collaborate with me. It's come in dreams. My
did you dream this? Yeah. Did you dream this?
I actually did dream, getting to other audiences and speaking, to other audiences, and especially to women. It's not the same experience when I'm interviewed by a man. There's something about wombs talking to wombs.
Mm-hmm. Also, just back to nipple stem one more time. I bet you the men wouldn't feel comfortable asking about that either.
Well, and that's part of the thing is I'm a family nurse practitioner. I see women, children, and men, but women are really the basis of my practice because not only is it just a natural, we're partners. I'm a sister with you trying to heal. I'm trying to help you figure things out. There's a lot of hugging in my office. Okay. I sit right in front of my patients and literally knee to knee. And if they're having an emotional moment, I'm there for them.
Oh. Do you do any virtual?
Yes, I do a lot of virtual, especially since the pandemic.
Amazing.
And I have patients who come to me from around the world. So we do a lot of virtual.
Yeah.
But, it becomes an intimate relationship, even just energetically. They'll call in or email and say, I'm having a procedure or I'm having this issue. Will you please, send some positive energy my way? Will you pray for me? Will you? And I'm there for them because it's a partnership. Or I'll wake up in the middle of the night having dreamt of someone and tell my medical assistant, call so-and-so, I'm concerned about her left breast.
Whoa.
They're like, oh my gosh, I better get in. And sure enough, there's something there.
That's amazing.
So, yeah, we become connected, just like I'm connected with my kids and my, they become part of my vibrational circle.
Yeah.
Ooh.
You know, they're a little bit farther out, but if something's going on, there's a red flag over there, there's smoke. I can feel it, I can perceive it. And it's like, okay, please contact this person. I have some concerns about them. Don't scare them, but we need to talk.
Yeah.
You're a dream practitioner. I know a lot of people are going to be like, how do I get in contact with her? How do I follow her? What's the best way to work with her? Maybe we set up something virtually, because I like the idea of my practitioner praying for me too.
Same.
Along with everything else that you said, and you were so experienced. So how can people find you, follow you, and work with you?
So my website is genesisgold.com. It's named after my nutraceutical. Everything you need to know about me is on there. I have a very, very active YouTube channel, so lots of educational videos. It's all connected there. There's also places to sign up for, consults. I call them root healing consults. You do not have to be a patient. You can just come in as, because of the law and working internationally, you come in as a client, and I do the same kind of level of care I do with my patients, except I may not be prescribing for you, but will recommend some things for your provider. Most of the tests we can do pretty easily. But if not, tell your provider what's needed. I've had providers all around the country say, just ask your nurse practitioner about this. I'm not sure what's going on here, and have her tell me what I'm supposed to be ordering here. So, because that's even my own provider is like, I don't know about hormones. Can you guide me? I'm like, well, you're going to learn a whole lot with me, aren't you?
Well, awesome.
But anyhow,
yeah.
So
I know you said you have a gift too for our audience. Do you want to let them know what that is?
I do have a gift for your audience. So I put together something special. I call it the Hypothalamus Reset Bundle. And what it is my Hypothalamus Handbook, the same ebook that I sent to you. And I also did a video tour with it. So each of the case studies in there, I take you through on a video tour so you can see your patterns. And I use the case studies to teach you and go deeper into these things like prolactin, autoimmunity. So there's different genders, there's different ages. I have kids in there, women, etc. It really goes deep, and it's my whole protocol. It's from them walking into the office and their words, and then my assessment and exactly what I did for them, and the plan and the follow-up there. And it also has a section in there for your healthcare provider, if you want to just copy it or get them the book, that tells them exactly what the ICD-10 coding is and how to look at this and the kind of tests and how to interpret the tests. And then there's a huge bibliography, because I just think not enough providers are focusing on the hypothalamus, and they just need a little education, and they really don't have a lot of time to take the kind of history that I do, because I'm, not functioning in a traditional medical practice, so they don't have the time. So you can find the Hypothalamus Reset Bundle at thehormonequeen.com/IV.
Yes.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I'm excited to take a look at that too myself. So we end every episode with 3 segments. First segment is your 3 gold stars. So just 3 top takeaways, could be tips, could be whatever comes to mind. 3 things you want to leave our listeners with today.
So if you do any one thing tonight, get off your screens after dusk. You'll sleep better. Finish your last meal at least 3 hours before you go to bed. So those are your 2 circadian tips. Okay. And then I'm going to teach your audience one really short thing. We talked a lot about stress, and we talked about cortisol. There's some new research that shows that vibration will stimulate the vagal nerve to actually calm down your system. And you can do that through humming. When you hum, you're literally vibrating your vagal nerve. And I find that when I'm in a really stressful situation, I naturally am humming to myself. I've been doing this all my life, just humming. And what it is, it's a lullaby that I used to hum to my babies when I was breastfeeding them. And so I was also producing oxytocin. So my whole body's set up when I hum this lullaby, I automatically start making GABA and oxytocin.
Ooh, wow. That's cool.
So humming can be really good. I know we talk about deep breathing, and yes, that works, but it's really hard to deep breathe when you're under major stress. But just start humming whatever your favorite song is, something you can hum. That vibration will stimulate your vagal nerve and start calming your body down.
I love those tips. Oh, those are so good. Okay, next up is Unleashing Ivy. Just random questions that we're curious about that are a surprise to you. I want to tap a little bit more into Deborah's woo-woo-y side because you've said some things that I want to go to coffee. I want to go to a retreat with you. I want to feel like you've got some stories. You've dreamt up some stuff. So I don't know if you want to give me a story or you want to give me a tip for other people to tap into how you've kind of, I don't know if you want to say manifested or dreamt up this life that you're living. But maybe, just to people that are like, I wish I had more agency over my life and what it looks like. And, these dreams that I kind of have, but they feel so far out of reach. Like, what would you say to that person?
So, first of all, we're all born with this intuitiveness that allows us to tap into what I believe is your higher self or your divine spark or God, goddess, whatever you want to call it, that allows us to tap into that bigger knowledge, that bigger information. But we get in our own way. We doubt. We don't believe. We grow up with people that say, your imaginary friend isn't real. Your dreams aren't real per se. Now, I was very fortunate because my Nana was a strega, which basically means Italian witch, which actually really means that she was the healer of the village in South Philly.
Wow.
And one of my earliest memories, I'm about 20 months old. I'm underneath a pink formica table with those metal legs in a pink kitchen in Sheraton Street in Philadelphia. Nana's legs, mommy's very swollen legs because she's pregnant with a twin, and another woman. And there's blood dripping on the floor between the other woman's legs. And I stand up and place my hand on her tummy and tell her, not this one. She had come to my grandmother because she was threatening a miscarriage, and she wanted my grandmother to make her up a concoction. And my grandmother took one look at me and said, "Oh my God, she's got the gift," and tried to harness it in me, scared the poop out of my dad. My dad took us to California. I was still able to communicate telepathically with my grandma. Whenever I needed her, I would just call for her, and she would call on the phone and talk mama down, talk to me. So it never stopped, but my mom also believed in the dreams too. And she had, prophetic dreams as well and feelings, etc. But the difference was Nana and Mom were kind of fear-based. So they looked at everything as like, oh my God, this is going to happen. I always looked at it as an opportunity, as a challenge, as a positive things. So I've had a lot of bad things happen to my life. Anybody else would call it, very traumatic things. I look at them as gifts. So what I say to myself whenever I'm entering a situation, no matter what it is, a challenging situation, a scary situation, a good situation, I take a deep breath. I put my hands over my womb in kind of that chalice formation. So fingertips together like prayer, but upside down. And I say, may I be open to the gift of this encounter silently. And I always receive it. It may not be in the moment. It may be a little later. It's usually some kind of a lesson, but it's looking at life's challenges as like, what do I need to learn here? Because if you learn your soul lessons early, you get to move on to another level. Or you get to repeat it over and over again like a class because you're not learning it. So being open to receive those gifts is very, very helpful. And just telling yourself, asking to be open, you will be more open to whatever's the good coming out of it, even if it's a bad situation.
Yeah.
Even if it's a situation that would normally not help. So how do you tap into that? It's practice. And like I said before, with my patients and my customers who have taken my nutraceutical to wake up their hypothalamus, they kind of naturally become more open to this and naturally start dreaming things and dreaming what they need to do next or what is getting in their way and start manifesting. And that's the thing is, can you trust yourself to know what's the right thing for you? And how do you do that? Do you do muscle testing? Do you use a pendulum? Do you do automatic writing? How do you pray and receive the answers? How do you pray and receive the answers? This is so strong in me and my family. I already see it in my 7-year-old granddaughter who asked my husband, we met in high school, my husband and I, and she asked my husband, do you remember how you met Nana? And he explained us meeting in track. She said, do you think that was an accident? Said, I don't know. She just showed up in my school and we met in track. She said, Papa, that wasn't an accident. Nana dreamt you, and she made it happen.
Wow. Well, that was a good mix of story.
Yeah, my question, I'm going to go off of that for my question. For those listening that are healing, that maybe are really struggling right now, how can they use that to notice some shifts in their mind and their body?
So I would suggest that you keep a written journal, not a digital journal, by your bed. And every night before you go to sleep, write down what you might need to do the next day, or you might need to get rid of it. You're trying to tuck it away in a drawer. Just write down. You don't want to take it to sleep. Then set your intentions before you go to sleep that you are going to receive or dream whatever you need to know at this time.
Okay.
You're not setting your intention to dream about dead grandma. You're not setting your intention to dream about a Hawaiian vacation. Just, what do I need to know at this time? And then in the morning, before you get out of bed, grab that little journal. So keep it tiny, keep a pen right there. Write whatever you can remember. In the beginning, you might not remember much, but eventually, it may only be an emotion. I just felt scared, or I felt excited, or there was a lot of red, and then it'll start coming to you. As soon as you start writing that down, you'll start remembering your dreams. My husband could not remember his dreams at all. It helped with the hypothalamic support, but I had to train him by making him stay in bed and tell me, okay, what did you dream about? What was your last memory?
So it's good to remember your dreams.
Yes, because it's going to reveal to you, there's that subconscious that is revealing to you things that you need to learn. It's usually not literal. It's usually symbolic.
Okay.
This is
And
fun.
so interpreting your dreams, you may need a dream interpreter. You may need it, online. Some of that's okay. It's not always that accurate, but it's a good place to start. Talk to other women about your dreams as well, and they may come up with things. What my belief is you're everything in your dream. It isn't that your husband had an affair on you. It's that you are affecting us. You don't feel faithful to yourself. You are all the parts. I'm very much Jungian in that perspective. You are all the parts of the dream, and it's things that you need to work on. What does it mean? What is, the showing up to school without clothes on, that's a very common dream that people have. It's anxiety. It's not being prepared. It's being naked in front of the world. It's being exposed. It's not, you didn't actually do that. That's not actually going to happen, but it's revealing that you feel exposed.
Oh,
fascinating.
So
okay, I'm gonna try that. I'll report back. I like that.
Yeah, me too.
Okay. Great.
Okay. Last question, Deborah. If you could go back and tell your younger self something, what age would you go back to, and what would you tell her?
I would go back to 14 years old when I became anorexic, right before I became anorexic. And I was too afraid. So I didn't become anorexic for the typical reasons. I was not molested. I didn't have all the typical stuff. I literally always believed that my mission in life would start when I became a woman. And at 14, I had an incident. I was walking in a bikini. I remember it was like a yellow bikini with my little sisters and my pop-up, and my dad had bought us ice cream cones, and we're eating ice cream. And my dad yelled up ahead and said, "Your elbows are showing," which was our code word that your bathing suit was climbing up your bottoms and to pull it down. But I heard in his voice that all of a sudden, that the world looked at me as a woman, and I wasn't ready for my mission to start. So I looked at that ice cream cone and said, this will be the last ice cream I ever eat. And I was starting high school in the fall. So that was just 2 months later, and I lost 20 pounds, lost my breasts, lost my period, and that began anorexia. That was before Karen Carpenter died, and we even knew what anorexia was. Okay, I'm that old. Anyhow, I would tell that 14-year-old that help is coming and support is coming, and to hold on, that you're not alone, and that you'll be able to tap in to the guidance from your higher self and your maternal ancestors and all that wisdom. But don't punish yourself and don't hide. That's what I tell her.
Oh, it brings me to tears.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Wow. Oh, well, this has been a wild ride. A wild ride. Deborah, I love your brain and I love your stories. And I'm so grateful that you know that this is the path for you. I'm sure you help so many people. Oh my gosh, I want to be in your office with you.
I want to try the nutraceutical. I'm excited.
Yeah.
I feel like that's definitely something worth trying.
Yes. And thank you for the gift. Thank you for we're going to put everything in our show notes so people can link to you. But thank you for just this time and sharing yourself and your stories and your brilliant brain. Your book too, we'll make sure people have links to that too, so that they can learn more about their bodies. And it's just magical putting it all together. And so thank you so much for joining us today. And just thanks for, opening up these young stories, these scientific stories, these patient stories. I think stories really help people feel connected to someone. And I think, overall it's just going to help people heal more. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure. And I just want to tell your audience, please leave these ladies a 5-star review so they can be found by the algorithm. I did, because they are such good interviewers.
Thank you.
Thank you for this opportunity.
Yeah, that means the world. We leave our listeners with a piece of gold, a quote. Could be your quote, a quote you love. Anything that comes to mind. Would you please send us off with your piece of gold today?
Healing is innate. And if your hypothalamus, which directs your DNA, gets what it needs to heal, you will reach your optimal potential, body, mind, and soul.
This is Gold Ivy signing off.
Listen to your truth and go chase your gold. Oh
my gosh.
That was a good quote.
I'm going to put that in quotes. Wow.